To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Come on, bub, for old time's sake, huh?
Harley Quinn, nice to meet ya.
Pardon my French. Fuck those fuckers.
Favorite Marvel character ever, but you should never meet your heroes because honestly, he's a bit of a dick.
Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Cat.
I am inevitable. Hulk. Smash!
Right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Comics in Motion podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Phelps, and my co-host and very good friend is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, Chris, and hello to our listeners out there. Welcome to Comics in Motion TV and movie reviews for shows that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be reviewing from the perspective of a long-time comic book reader.
And I'll be reviewing from the TV and movie perspective.
And what we also like to do is we also like to spoil the hell out of everything we review. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, then we'd advise you to proceed with caution. And remember, with an average podcast comes no responsibility. Now, Chris, we're going to do something a little bit different this week. What are we going to review this week?
Well, Dave.
I thought I'd just get this week sentence twice and appear like a complete douchebag. So
No, it's all right. Maybe should have let you finish. Sorry. We're going to review, Dave, the Melissa McCarthy-led 2019 DC and Vertigo comic movie, The Kitchen.
Awesome. Now, I have to ask, were you aware of this one?
I was aware of it in the cinema, and I also was aware of it that it's sort of been on a list in the background of movies to watch because I wasn't, for some reason, I thought it was a completely different movie than what we actually saw. But because what it is with Melissa McCarthy, Dave, loved her in Bridesmaids. I've watched loads of the slapstick comedy stuff she's done, but she's the same character in every single movie. She's like Rebel Wilson, the Australian girl, you know, the blonde girl who's in the comedian, the big girl. She's in. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you
Rebel
what,
Wilson,
you love a rom-com, don't you? Because she's in there. She's in this one that I've watched a couple of times now with one of the Hemsworth brothers.
I've seen it. He's got like a Groundhog Day.
Yeah, she's like in this rom-com world. Oh, mate, I think it's my favourite rom-com.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's brilliant.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a modern version of Groundhog. We only watched that. God, they must be about 2 or 3 months ago. That it's on Netflix. I think. But that's a good film.
Is it
so?
Is it One More Time with Feeling?
Something like that, yeah. And it's Liam Hemsworth in it. He's the main lead in it.
Yeah,
he's like the fit guy who she's loved and all this.
I just love the bit where he's walking through and she wants to have sex with him, you know, and he's looking very Hemsworthy, isn't he? You know, comes out of the shower and she sort of wants to have sex with him, and it's like, no, it just cut to the morning. What the hell's going on? And it keeps going to the same scene. She's like, fucking come here.
Yeah, every day. It is a good film. It's a cracking film. And my comparison with her is it's the same films with Melissa McCarthy. I've been absolutely Melissa McCarthy'd out. I've seen about 10 of her movies, and she doesn't deviate at all from the same character in all of them. However, this one, she's completely removed from that Melissa McCarthy, and actually shows that she's a really good actress, to be honest.
Yeah, I was the same. I mean, I thought Bridesmaids and stuff like that, and I can't think of other stuff that she's done, but you know, like you say, she's the same, and kind of like you could say she's one of those female gross out type, you know, comedians. In this, I almost didn't recognize her. I almost forgot that I was watching Melissa McCarthy in this one.
Yeah.
And the other girl is in it as well, isn't she? Who's in the Handmaid's Tale?
Oh, yeah, Elizabeth Moss. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought she was good. I thought the whole cast were really good. Now, I have to say the comic that this is based on, the first issue only came out in 2014. And it was part of DC Vertigo Comics. So, you know, the Vertigo brand is not kind of around anymore, but, you know, they dealt with things that were outside of the regular DC universe. So they don't have to tell, you know, stories clad in, you know, about superheroes clad in spandex. You know, they can tell lots of different types of stories. So, you know, you sometimes get these little mini series like The Kitchen coming out and these little surprises. So it's obviously it's one of these that's gone quite quickly from being a comic and then straight into being a movie. I mean, the movie came out 2019. So for a movie to turn around in that time, it's usually Mark Millar who can turn around that quick, but others
Yeah.
aren't quite so lucky. So, yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. A guy called Ollie Masters was the writer for that, and yeah, I need to pick it up because I've read of it, but I haven't actually read it, so I need to get on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting, because obviously it's set in the 70s, set in 1978, the year I was born. So I love, as you know, the American stuff. It's all in New York. It's of its time. It's got the American muscle cars in it. I love that 70s era of America. I love the Joker for that reason, Dave, because it was set around that sort of late 70s, 80s type world. And I know it's dingy and dark and like a depression at times, but I really enjoyed it. And knowing the different areas properly of New York now, having been a couple of times, it's interesting the divide of places like the Bronx, Brooklyn, New Jersey, and all that sort of thing. It's not just when someone says New York is just that city, really, even though it's the whole state as such, isn't it? New
Hmm.
York State, but it's also the city. So you've got these offshoots, and I've gone through watching The Sopranos in lockdown. So knowing that they were from New Jersey and they were classed as like the poor man's gangsters, Tony Soprano in real life, but they weren't. But yeah, I just love it because it's of a city that I love. And I think what's interesting before we get into review is this film, and let's be honest, this film has been absolutely slated. I mean, it's critically, it's got panned from every side going. Like, I watched the film. The one thing, I don't know if you've seen it, Dave, but there's a film that I watched last year. Have you seen one called The Widows?
No, no.
So a film come out last year called The Widows. It was a remake of a movie that came out. It might have been late 70s, 80s, but it's a remake of that, and it was starred. Liam Neeson was in it. He was like the main husband, and basically at the start, I think John Bertham might be in it. 6 or 7 these guys are on like a heist, and they're all there, the proper armed robbers. Anyway, they get killed, all of them, wiped out, and the career criminals. All these guys are in love, and then the women basically take it on and take on the business then, Dave, and go after like the money. They start doing heists themselves and all this. Very similar to The Kitchen.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, The Widows was from years ago, the film. And this is when I was watching that, I thought, this is a very similar beats. Obviously, the guys all go to prison, but they're in the movie, they get killed. But spoiler alert, do you want me to spoil it, Dave?
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if you're ever
yeah.
going to say the spoil. And I watched this at the cinema last year. The spoiler is all of the husbands are not dead. The bodies were set up bodies, and
Right, right.
sorry, it was Liam Neeson. Sorry, he's the only one who's not dead. Her husband, the woman who's the main star, is her out of Suicide Squad, who runs the whole team. Dave, the older woman, she's like the wife in it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, she gets them all together. But yeah, this has got beats of that. And I saw in some of the reviews saying this is just a rip off of Widows, but just not as good. Now, I didn't necessarily like Widows. I thought it was okay. And it got proper hype. I think it was late last year. And I didn't rate it. I didn't think it was amazing. I thought, yeah, it was good, but it wasn't unbelievable.
Hmm.
So quite interesting comparison. And I mean, just to see what you think when we get into it. But yeah, it has got a bit of background with me. But again, I just don't understand the actual critical slamming of it. And financially, it made absolutely nothing. 38 million budget, made 16 million. It got fucking absolutely railroaded out of the cinema.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I was aware of it, but I mean, it didn't seem to be really marketed. And I think you were going to the cinema like every week at the time, weren't you? So
Yeah,
you'd have
yeah,
probably, when this came out, you'd have known every single film that was coming out, wouldn't you?
yeah,
And so with your unlimited card, or was it unlimited? That's the
yeah, yeah,
Cineworld one. It was unlimited. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it more when we go into the meat of our review, but I'm not joining up what the critics say with what I saw.
Me too.
I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes here. Um, One of the critics says it's a tonal mess, occasionally parody poor, a hilarious amount of deadpan funeral scenes, and frequently makes no sense, especially when Moss's mousy Claire becomes a bloodthirsty killing machine. Rating 1 out of 5. I That's not what I saw at all.
No. Honestly, I watched it first, and it's just because of our schedules. And I messaged you, and I didn't want to ruin it. And I just said to you, dinner, I'm really enjoying this. And I know sometimes I'll do that to you, knowing it's a load of shit. And then
Winding me
you'll
up.
be like, yeah, winding you up, and you'll message me going, fuck off. So I had to double messages to go, no, genuinely, I'm enjoying the movie. I thought, it's just something that I like. And I think for me, and we'll talk about it when we get into it, this is one film that I think deserves to be watched and ignore the reviews, because I don't get what the angle was with the reviews. There's something going there, whether because it's a female director, Dave. Is there some sort of bias there? I'm not sure.
You know what, Chris? I'm not going to be a social justice warrior about this, but again, I'll come back. You know, Rotten Tomatoes isn't my favorite, but
Yeah,
sometimes it does give you a little bit of a clue as to what's going on. It gets 24% from the critics. It gets 69% from the audience score.
yeah,
That's a massive disparity, isn't it?
yeah,
I just, is it because it's a female, look, gangland fucking mafiosa style movies like this. I know it's the Irish gangland, and they're not Italian, but movies like this, are so macho, aren't they? We used to watching The
yeah,
Godfather, where the women play very little kind of minor role, really, don't they? Just supporting roles. Is it that people are just uncomfortable and uneasy about seeing these women in a very macho type part of history, the in the 70s, like I don't know, there's just something off, and it smells a bit funny to me. I don't
yeah,
know what it is that I'm smelling, but you know, I'm not being clever there. It's genuinely, there's just something off. It doesn't make sense to me, because we'll get into our ratings and what have you, but I mean, putting it out there straight away, I really quite enjoyed it. And I don't. Most of the time, when we watch something that's about 24% on Rotten Tomatoes, it's usually pretty shit.
yeah.
But this one definitely isn't.
No, and you won't be getting the famous words of "This is the worst thing I've ever seen," Dave, because we think we're going to be on the same page. So, should we get into our trailer?
Let's go.
Times change. You do what you gotta do. From kids,
Most employers don't want mothers. It's a competitive market.
You don't know me.
for money, you survive.
Now might be the time
For what?
for you.
Our husbands have 24 months left on their sentences.
Sorry, baby.
This is the Irish mob, organized crime.
We're gonna take care of you. You girls are gonna be just fine.
We got no money.
Can't even make the rent with what they gave me last night. They didn't want me in the family in the first place.
40 years we pay protection and we don't get nothing for it. They have been telling us forever that we are never going to do anything but have babies. Bunch of men that have forgotten what family means.
So we remind them.
You look pretty, Mama.
Pretty doesn't matter. It's just a tool women use.
For what?
Anything we want.
What do you want?
We are gonna have crews everywhere.
I can see you got brains, and I know you got money. But we got one thing that you don't. We got criminals.
Told you we can't go around working for a bunch of women.
You are not smarter than me. I will wipe you off the face of the earth.
I don't want you to do it. I want you to teach me how to do it.
Just to be clear, now we run this neighborhood.
Step off my business.
Baby, it's my business now.
They're going to swallow this entire city. You go to war, there's no coming back.
Alfonso Coretti wants to talk.
If we go to Brooklyn, we're dead.
What do you wear to something like that? You get dressed up?
You kidding? What? My God, I lost count again.
Now we start off, we're in Hell's Kitchen, and it's 1978, and there is no Daredevil in this universe, by the way, which is where I associate Hell's Kitchen with. But anyway, we've got three women, and basically they're married to members of the Irish mob. Now, Kathy's married to this reluctant but kind Jimmy. Ruby's married to Kevin, the son of Helen and heir to the mob empire. And Claire is married to Rob, who abuses her. Chris, what do you make to the opening of this one?
Dave, I think it starts really strong. The whole continuity, I think the cinematography is fantastic of it. Very clever with the actual camera work, because you can see they've took like a block over to film it, and the camera pans very quickly once the dialogue's thing, because obviously New York is 2020 or 2019 when this was filmed. I think it's really good. Melissa McCarthy really surprised me, because she's this proper downtrodden housewife, isn't she? She's pulling it together. And obviously, all the guys end up getting arrested, don't they, by the FBI and everything.
Mhm.
And obviously, Ruby's husband is the one, like say, Kevin, he's an absolute bastard. He's an absolute psycho. He genuinely, trigger finger, really, really hothead. Rob's the same. Rob beats up Claire. Claire's covered in bruises. She's used to getting beat up. That's played by Elizabeth Moss out of The
Mhm.
Handmaid's Tale, who also is playing in this part, the same part she plays in Handmaid's Tale, but also, Dave, I thought she's fantastic in The Invisible Man.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
brilliant in that, really good in that. And I think her acting range is so good when she's playing someone who's downtrodden and really up against it. I think it really brings out her acting style. So I think, Dave, honestly, I mean this, and I know we've alluded to it a minute ago for the trailer. I think this is a fucking really good film. I think it's definitely rewatchable. It's just of its time. It's got tones of a bit of a gangster thing there. The Irish mafia, aren't they? And you've got like the Italian mob there. You've got all these other people involved. And I just think the cast is really strong. I think Melissa McCarthy steals a lot of the scenes, but I also like Ruby, who's played by Tiffany Haddish. She's really good in this. She's one who's downtrodden wife, and because she's black, she's getting very racially abused, isn't she? The mother-in-law fucking hates her. She's like the crime lord. The mum, she's horrible, isn't she? She's a proper old bag. And Helen.
Yeah. Chris, you know that I always say the greatest crime a movie can commit is you just don't care. You don't care about what's going on. You don't care about the people in it. God, the fucking mother-in-law. I hated her.
Oh, what a part, though, Dave. What a part she's playing. You're right.
Exactly. She was playing that part brilliantly because she was a nasty, horrible human being. And honestly, when she got her comeuppance, I was like, yes, fucking get it.
Yeah, I was. You fucking bitch. Get down them stairs. But yeah, I was just saying.
But I don't get this criticism about the tonal mess. I don't know if people are bringing baggage with them that, because Melissa McCarthy is in it, oh yeah, she's the goofy, comedian that we've seen many times before and kind of looking out for her, waiting for her to play that part. I thought I thought she disappeared into the role. I thought, I forgot all of her previous movies when I was watching this. And I love that dynamic between them because they are all downtrodden. You've got this kind of falseness, haven't you? Because when the guys go into prison, and Kevin, do you recognise Kevin?
Of course, David. General Hux.
Oh no! I think
that's Gabriel,
I
isn't it?
think
That's
Gabriel.
Gabriel.
No, I think Gabriel is somewhat. He looks. I thought he was General Hux at first, but I don't think he is. I think he's a different Irish actor. Kevin, the absolute arsehole, who's married to Ruby, so he's played by James Badge Dale, and he was in Iron Man 3. He was the one. He was the one who
the
Happy
opposite.
was tailing and then blew up.
Yes, he was. No,
Yeah.
Dave, that's definitely General Hux, that guy. I checked up on it. Donnell Gleeson it is. The assassin,
See,
the gingerhead
I
lad.
thought he was, and then I looked him up and I couldn't see. Hold on, I got IMDb here. See, it says he's known for Ex Machina, Frank, About Time. He's not. Oh no, he fucking is. Yeah,
He is,
General
yeah.
Hooks. How the fuck? Right? Can you you know, his second movie, right? Because this is what I looked up last night where I was watching it. His second movie that he's known for is Frank. You know,
Yeah.
Frank fucking Sidebottom,
Yeah.
right? How
Yeah.
can you not be known as being General Hooks?
It's fucking
I'm glad
nonsense.
I'm glad you clarified that for me though, because I
Yeah.
didn't scroll down and look at his movies. I just thought, fucking hell, he doesn't half look the same, you know. But
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely, and it's Dave also. More importantly, he's in Peter Rabbit as well.
yeah, of
'Cause
course. I actually saw he was in a pretty good Black Mirror as well, with old Agent Carter. What's the name? Agent Carter. Fucking rubbish at names. Haley Atwell.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was in a Black Mirror with her, and he actually died off, and then you could pay for this service where you could recreate your loved one, but it was all kind of pieced together from their online social media presence and stuff. So it,
Yeah.
it was a it was a weird kind of half pieced together personality, but very fucking disturbing. I don't know why I don't get back into Black Mirror because I fucking loved them at the time. But anyway. So yes, General Hooks, of course. See, he plays a good role as well, doesn't he? But I
Yeah.
mean, before we get introduced to Gabriel, though, I mean, this fucking falseness. You know, you've got this little Jackie, and he's like, "We'll take care of you," and then he gives them fucking hardly anything. And then they go to have, they bring cookies, don't they, and say, it's not quite what we were expecting. And he's like, "You'll get what you're fucking given," kind of thing. So that's when they're in that situation where they kind of have to do something. They have to take matters into their own hands. And I think yeah, so that's around about the time, Gabriel's really the muscle, isn't he? He's kind of the psycho that enables them to start building up this empire. But I like the fact that you're introduced to these characters that are downtrodden, and when I'm watching things like this, I'm thinking, fucking hell, what could you do? Fucking late 70s, you not got enough money to feed your family or whatever. What the fuck do you do? So I like how it built that up.
It was good. No, I like that. The only reach which come from nowhere, and may have been me, didn't spot it, was when little Jackie, who's running it all, and as you say, he shits on all the women, and they're trying to sort of get some protection stuff going, aren't they, and get a name for themselves. Is they threaten him, don't they, and say like, it's you're finished,
Mhm.
and then Ruby says, "You've not got the bottle." He always said you didn't have the bottle, and he says, "Lock your doors up." And as
Yeah.
she's putting Elizabeth Moss's character, Claire, as she's putting a rubbish out, he comes behind her and tries to rape her.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel, from nowhere, just blows his head off. Now, I might be wrong here, but I'd not seen any foreshadowing there or any storytelling that he was even in the movie. He just came from nowhere, shot him, and I was like, "Oh right, there's General Hooks.
Yeah.
Where's he come from?" So that's the only bit in the movie that jarred with me, Dave, slightly, but not enough to take me away from the story. I just accepted it that he was an ex-lover, someone who she loved, who left her because he had to get out of town, but also because she was married. He didn't want to break a marriage up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I get that love story, but also the next scene, they're fucking chopping a body up with knives, aren't they? Oh, it's fucking minging.
And again, I don't know if that's one of the things that the critics are moaning about, because it is, all right, it's gruesome, isn't it? But it is slightly comedic. But
Yes.
you see that in like Tarantino movies as well, don't you?
Yeah.
That you get that real fucking dark humor in there as well, and looking at how ridiculous and gruesome this particular scene is. So yeah, I think I didn't see any problem with that. But yeah, old Claire, she takes to it quite easily,
Quite
doesn't
well.
she? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but again, I can kind of buy it. Whereas other people might think, oh yeah, she wouldn't have done that. She was just a housewife. She'd been fucking abused, and beaten up and fucking shit on, and you imagine probably for the best part of her own life. Yeah, she's got some fucking demons to work out, and I can imagine she might go a bit, she might start taking it out on other people. So no, I bought that one full hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, I did, and obviously as the movie comes on, they do take all the little Jackies round. They take on all these sort of gangster thugs as well, and they all like come together. But then we get the little twist where we get the Italians coming, don't we? This Alfonso Caretti, he sends one of his guys who comes up to Cafe in the street and says, Alfonso wants to come and see you, and they make a deal and end up getting like more streets of New York to run, don't they? So they're making coin, but we then get the little sort of twist, the heel twist, where Ruby's fucking dipping money on the side, isn't she? And putting a little nest egg away on the sly. And we can't work out what's going on there at that point. She looks like she's just being a complete bitch.
Yeah, and again, I kind of like this. I like the fact that, when they were downtrodden, they all had a common goal. They pulled together. They became this united team. And they did something fantastic. All right, on the wrong side of the law, we might say, but they did something. But then when they start to be successful, all the cracks start to appear, don't they? The different
Yeah.
personalities. And like you say, she's like, oh, I've taken this money for expenses. I needed it, blah, blah, blah. And you can see they're not all getting on particularly. Claire's having a go as well. She's saying, you're not the leader of this group and what have you. So I thought it was interesting how that sort of played out. I did feel quite sorry. So, I mean, when Claire ultimately bites the dust, I sort of I couldn't work out if I believe that or not, because it was a bit Michael Myers, wasn't it? The guy comes in because the husbands had taken out a hit on them, hadn't they? They'd come out of prison. They didn't really like the fact that the women had taken over and kind of noses were put out of joint a bit. So then they try and kill off Claire, and they shoot this guy coming in, and then he's effectively dead, isn't he, on the floor, like say Michael Myers style, and then out of nowhere just comes out, blows the brains out, kind of thing. And so it was just, when you're in this gritty, realistic world, for me, I don't like to see horror type tropes.
Yeah.
So at horror you have to suspend your disbelief, don't you? But if you get shot, I imagine the first thing, if you get shot and you're not dead, the first thing I'd imagine would be because it fucking hurts. I don't care how tough you think you are. So yeah, I didn't really buy that bit, to be quite honest.
No, and I must admit, Dave, that's the only character out of the three that I thought was going to get killed. I thought he was a bit too obvious because the other two didn't kill anybody, not directly anyway. She did. She got, Gabriel showed her how to just walk up, be cool, blow someone's head off, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And she did do that. She killed 2 people, and then she killed her husband. So I think she killed 3 people in the end. So she pretty much wasn't a redeemable character. It was very much a little Bonnie and Clyde type situation going on the side with them two. It was a love of passion because she was abused. She didn't want to be abused. She then liked the fact that she could abuse other people. And there was, he said to her, let's have a kid and all this. And then that happened. I would say that I saw that coming a mile off that she was going to go, as I just said. So that's the only thing there. And the one thing that I'm sounding like I'm shitting on. I'm not. I really enjoyed watching it. The only thing that was a bit weird in the movie that didn't deliver as we build up to it is the situation with the police and the FBI. I didn't see that coming, but I didn't think it needed it, if that makes sense.
I thought it was a bit of a stretch, wasn't it? The fact that, I mean, it seems like Ruby's married Kevin, or got together with Kevin, and basically she's in with this FBI guy, and it's all been this long-term plan to get into Hell's Kitchen. So Ruby seems to basically be on this path where she's always wanted to be this gangster. And so I think, whereas I thought at the beginning, the girls had to do this out of necessity. They had to feed their families and stuff. They had to deal with the fact that they had no income. And so, and they were struggling for jobs as well, weren't they? It kind of got that initial scene where Melissa McCarthy's kind of going to the guy and he's not interested. And it's like, people aren't interested in hiring women, because what happens if you need to go and mind your kid and stuff? I can imagine it was tough like that. But yeah, it was a bit of a stretch, wasn't it? That basically Ruby has gone through this years long plan along with someone who's in the FBI to basically create this little criminal empire.
Yeah, and also the FBI agent shot his own partner, didn't he? We
Yeah,
see a part of the
yeah,
movie
yeah.
near the end where the FBI agent, obviously there's no mobile phones, he's dialing in to call himself into the office, and then someone puts a bullet through his head, and it's like we get this little. That's the only bit I wasn't interested in, that one bit at all. I really was interested in the dynamic of the families and hoping the girls all got peace with the husbands, and they got to be able to stay as the gang, the gangsters as such.
Hmm.
That's what I was invested in the movie. And I do think, honestly, Dave, I thought it was a good movie. I really do. But I just think that bit didn't deliver. It wasn't a Kaiser Soze moment where you're like, holy shit. It just lacks punch. And I don't really think it added anything to the story, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. I suppose they had to give some kind of twist. But it's yeah, I agree. I don't think that one fully landed. And I don't think it needed it either. I don't think. I guess I could have just gone with the fact that Ruby had got all kind of power hungry, and she got
Yeah.
taste for it, and then she's a bit more hungry for it. But I guess it all ties up to the fact that this is why the blokes were in jail in the first place. So like I say, I think it's supposed to be that Kaiser Soze moment, but it didn't really. I don't quite know why it didn't really land. I don't think particularly well.
No, no, and I think after that scene, the more powerful scene was when Kathy goes to pick her kids up from school and they're not there,
Yeah.
and she thinks someone's taken them, and then obviously Coretti rings her and says, "I've got your kids," because fucking Jimmy, her husband, who's jealous of the fact that his wife has made a name for herself in a 18-month period or whatever it is, and he couldn't do that in his whole lifetime, is with these guys, and he goes to actually get his wife bumped off, doesn't he? Make a deal
Yeah.
and takes the kids. So that's just career suicide in the end. She has to make the decision. She just says, "Well, he's not worth anything to me." When Coretti says the same, and you never see him again. He dies, doesn't he? And she's at his funeral. But I think that was more powerful than the scene with Ruby. And then obviously from there, we get the fact that Ruby and Gabriel are going to try and off Kathy, aren't they? But when they come out in the store, Kathy's got the full, like, she's got a dad there, hasn't she? And all these other people, because her dad's not been happy with her.
Yeah.
In this thing, which is the union thing in New York, that's gone on for years, where you see it in The Sopranos and that there's a lot of truth to where they had, and I've read books and everything where the unions are run. Look at Jimmy Hoffa.
Hmm.
It's all about getting their guys in so everyone gets a piece of the pie when you're building. And he says it, Coretti, I want my guys building this new sports complex arena in New York and
Yeah.
all this. I want them, so it's all that stuff is what the undertones is, the mob and all that. And I think that works and it's of its time. The end bit, I'm not sure. Gabriel just gives everything up and walks out, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So that was a bit. I wasn't expecting that. I must admit. I thought it was going to be some sort of shootout.
Yeah, it was kind of. There was no like crescendo, was there? It was all building
No,
up. You saw that Ruby was planning to take out Kathy. Gabriel was just fucked off because Moss's character had been killed off.
Claire.
Claire, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, but he's just like, fuck this. And I think he just seems a bit of a hard case when he's just.
Yeah.
I think he was in it, in this whole thing for Claire. So yeah, it doesn't really surprise me that he just sort of walked off there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you like to have a business partner where you just think at any opportunity you're going to get offed?
Yeah, you could have killed them.
Yeah, it just seemed. I don't know. I think Kathy said something like, if I kill you, then at some point someone's going to kill me, and this all has to end at some point. That's not how this mob life works, though, is it? There's
No.
always someone. Your life is always under threat, really, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought I wasn't massively happy with that ending, if I'm honest. You know, it didn't seem to really, like you say, the whole Kaiser Soze switch with the guy from the FBI didn't fully land, and then the way they just kind of have this uneasy partnership in the end. I'm not sure I completely bought that.
No, the one thing I would say with the comparisons of Widows, as I said at the top of the show, is this is more plausible and believable. Obviously, we know, Elizabeth Moss's character Claire does become full on psycho, but there is a little bit of storytelling with the fact that she's an abused wife. She's had enough. She wants, she lost a baby and all this stuff. She's got pure hate. I can buy that. And I buy that the other two were just the brains of the operation. They weren't fighters. They were just strong women, knew what they had to do to survive and put food on the table. When you watch Widows, Dave, these women go from housewives to fucking full on John Rambo, fucking doing heists and everything from nowhere. They'd go into training and they could do like a training montage type situation where they have a load of training and that. But even then, it's a fucking stretch when they're out doing career criminals and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So that's the only thing I would say that I with you. It doesn't hit like it should, but I just think it's quite a good movie overall. I think the whole content of the film is good. There's nothing that I'd come away from it and go, that was amazing. But however, it's certainly watchable. It's an hour and 40 minutes. It's definitely something you could sit there and watch in an afternoon with a bit of popcorn or a drink or whatever. It's nowhere near as bad as what the critics are saying, in my opinion.
No, my mind was just wondering. I think I can't remember which week it is, but we've got Under Siege coming out on the VHS, haven't we?
Yes.
And you've got Erica Eleniak's character Jordan, and she goes basically from being Playboy model to Navy SEAL within
with the biggest
within
gun.
a few hours,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't think I think it's more believable, a lot more believable than that. Even though, like say, I picked a few nits while we've been going through there, but yeah, broadly speaking, I think it's pretty good, and I do like Kathy's character as well because she's the only one I think who is kind of redeemable, and you can buy her reasons. Like say Ruby seems like she was playing the long game. She's been on this crime mob path for a while, and it was all kind of you know orchestrated to get to this point.
Yeah.
Claire, she had been abused. She'd had a horrible life, but then goes a bit psycho and likes the killing a little bit too much. You know, Kathy is the one who, she tried to protect her husband, didn't she? For quite a while, she's saying he's not done anything. Leave him alone, kind of thing, until he does do something, and then she has to make
Yeah.
that call ultimately for the safety of herself and the kids. So yeah, no, I thought it was good.
I agree, Dave. So, should we get into our review?
Yeah, let's go.
So, Dave, if you don't mind, I'll go first, if that's okay. Yeah. So, yeah, as I've alluded to, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think it's got a really strong cast. I think there's a couple of little things that we've picked out there, and I genuinely think it's more nitpicks. There's nothing that detracts me from the fact that I like the era it's set in. It's got all the cars I love, the whole New York grittiness about it. It's very much of the late 70s. I think they nailed that, in my personal opinion, really, really well. They compact it very well. The camera work's quite clever. Even some of the aerial shots in New York, when they've got the buildings above, they've obviously shot some of the buildings that were obviously there, the late 70s. That's all clever stuff. I just think it's a good movie. I think it's very similar to Widows. If you haven't seen Widows, go out and watch it. It's not a bad movie. I found this better, to be honest, than Widows, and Widows got really critically acclaimed for being quite a good movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a great movie. Bit of a gangster feel to it, but right up my alleyway, Dave. Didn't feel, to be fair, like I was actually doing a Comics in Motion review this week. It just feels like it's a movie, just like a bit of a gangster stroke action movie, to be honest. So it's quite, I know that's not being disrespectful to what we review, but it's quite refreshing to go through some of that. Felt a little bit more grounded, if you know what I mean. There wasn't any Leica in sight or anything. So yeah, I was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. So I'm going to put it, Dave, to Hall of Justice right in the middle. I don't think it's crap. I don't think it's amazing, but it's definitely watchable. And I'd love if a couple of weeks down the line, some of our good friends who keep emailing in and that, like Joseph and that, if they do watch it, what they actually think, and Glenn and people like that, as they go through the back catalogue. Did you enjoy it? Do you think the reviews are right? Do you think we're wrong? I'd love to have that discussion again.
Awesome. Now, I think, if I think back to when we first started out, in this podcast world together, and we were like, let's do this comics in motion thing. One of the elements for me was I wanted to make sure we covered things that were outside of your spandex clad comic books. So, everyone, if you mention to an average Joe in the street, name a comic book movie, you'd go straight to Avengers nowadays, probably, but, prior to that, you'd probably be Superman, Batman. And so one of the things I wanted to tackle was, adaptations from books that weren't part of, the Marvel superhero universe or the DC superhero universe. So I think tackling something like this is fantastic, and like you say, it's just you do have a lot of not anything compared to like superheroes, but there's quite a few comic book crime, crime noir type books out there. Ed Brubaker is one of my favorites. He did one called Criminal, then went on. I became aware of him because he was doing Daredevil for a while. But so it's great to tackle something like this, and like you say, I guess you got the DC Vertigo flashing up at the start, didn't you? But if you weren't paying attention, didn't see that, you would never guess that this originated from a comic book. There's nothing in there at all. No superpowers, no super twists or anything. So I think that was fantastic. Like you say, I don't know quite why the critics have given it a massive panning. But the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, like I say, it's a very respectable 69%. So that tells its own story. And I can't honestly, Chris, say there isn't some misogyny in there somewhere. I genuinely think that because it just doesn't match up with what I saw. I think it is a pretty strong movie. Yeah, there's a few leaps. If we're to pick nits, there's a few leaps in there somewhere. But what film doesn't? Every film's got a little bit of stretch of believability in some spots. So no, I thought it was a really strong film. I'm going to stick it in the same. I'm going to go right in the middle, Hall of Justice. But it is a really strong Hall of Justice. Unlike yourself, this isn't particularly my sweet spot of movies, this kind of gangster film. But I can certainly appreciate it, and I did enjoy it. And, it kept my attention, and that's one of the things that I can say positive about it. It kept my attention. I was interested in the characters. When the old crime boss lady got shoved down the stairs, felt great, which probably makes me a horrible human being. But, she was a horrible piece of shit of a human being, so I don't feel too bad about it. So, yeah, no, I thought it was really good. So, yeah, like I say, Hall of Justice for me.
Oh, great stuff, Dave. So, Mr. Horrocks, let's play the trailer for next week's episode.
Yep. We're going back to the MCU with a bit of Winter Soldier.
Coming up on the drop zone, Cap.
You do anything fun Saturday night?
Well, all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead, so... No, not really.
If you ask Kristen out from statistics, she'd probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy. Was he wearing a parachute?
No. No, he wasn't. I joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to protect people.
Captain.
To build a better world sometimes means tearing the old one down.
And that makes enemies.
Are you ready for the world to see you as you really are? You look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
You need to keep both eyes open.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out? Your work has been a gift to mankind. You've shaped the century. I need you to do it one more time.
You're up. It's time.
Now, Chris, I know you haven't said it this time, so how would they get in contact with us?
On Twitter at Comics in Motion P. If you want to email into the show, guys, comicsinmotionpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you do get a chance, you've got a couple of minutes spare, can you get over to your podcast catching app and just drop me and Dave a review on this show? It really helps us get out there to more people. And also, as always, we've got various shows on this podcast feed, guys. So if there's something in the comic book realm that you love or something from Star Wars, we have got various shows. So get onto the feed and have a look there and see if there's anything that tickles your fancy.
Awesome. Now, Chris, great to go through this one with you. And after a good stitching up last week, I have to ask you, how are you going to finish this one off?
As I
could hear the keyboard typing away there.
Ding, ding, typing ding, away, ding. David. I've got fuck all, Dave. I don't know.
Give us a Godfather quote or something.
I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. Nothing to do with this movie, but
is that fucking Christian Bale does the Godfather?
I think it's as well when a man puts a coat around a kid. Yeah. When he's lost his parents. Bruce Wayne?
Well, we've not... Let's finish it there. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher. Tell Xavier. Go fuck yourself.
What in the ass?
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound.
Let's not stand on ceremony here, Mr. Wayne.
Would you care to step outside?
Come to me, son of Jor-El! Kneel before Zod!
Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face.
I am Iron Man.
I'm Batman.
Whoa!